All right.
for the
All right.
eventual
Yeah,
video
this
that'll
looks
come.
cool. I'm looking at it. This looks neat.
Yeah. So yeah, well, something to have on your mind for that. Netflix. They have some words to say.
Yeah, I heard this.
What?
Go on.
Why? Okay. Which I love IGN's little subtitle of buffering. That's, yep. Expecting a future generation that relies less on gaming consoles as major players like Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo push forward with new hardware. Did you read what the specific quote was? Because I want to sound off on the title alone, but it can't just be that.
It's kind of that. It's the younger generations don't want a PlayStation 6. They will just want to play games whenever, however, in the most convenient way possible on existing devices that they already own.
Well, duh.
This feels like something from like, this guy is not like someone who has never played games. Like he has worked on big budget AAA video games. So this feels like he's just trying to gaslight people.
Well, yes, he is. Look at this quote where he says, like, are 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds dreaming of owning a PlayStation 6? I am not sure. Like, he doesn't even know. He's just trying to... It sounds like he's just trying to make a case for Netflix gaming. That's all it is.
Right. Like, I'm very vigorous about lowering friction, eliminating if we can. I see that subscription friction as well. Maybe good friction because it makes business sense. But we did the test of eliminating a subscription for mobile games, Squid Game Unleashed, and we do many other tests. But the other friction is having enough controllers for the family, having a piece of hardware that might be expensive. That's another friction. Waiting for the game to download. That's another friction. Like in early 2024, the games engagement had tripled throughout 2023, signaling that continue to invest in the space in the future. But less than 1% of Netflix subscribers touch their game offerings. In fact, I actually wish I could turn them off because I'm tired of logging in to Netflix to watch something and getting ads to play video games. Like, I don't... and here's the thing, that this goes back to those people who are like, phone games and streaming games are going to be the biggest thing ever. And I'm like, dude, no. Maybe, if you can figure out this stuff on controls for phone, maybe phone. But like streaming video games ain't it. There is input latency.
Right.
Stop trying to gaslight people into streaming fucking video games.
I tried, man. I really tried. It's great for if you get to a Wi-Fi connection, but even then there is latency. So like high speed games that require a reaction time is just not going to happen.
Like, it's fine for a turn-based game. Like, you do Persona on these. But you do, like, old... Sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, the vast majority of video games are not turn-based. And playing with that kind of latency sucks.
It just doesn't feel good.
It's a bad experience. And, like, if you were a kid and you had that kind of latency, even then, I wouldn't like it. There's a difference between latency and just kind of shit frame rate. Like, N64 games, a lot of them had bad frame rate.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a massive, absurd amount of latency.
Right.
I'm
a fan of Shadow of the Colossus. I can play with bad frame rate, let me tell you.
Yes.
But it's not, yeah. So what I find most interesting about, I think this story brings up an interesting idea, which is, we are now entering a time where Gen Z doesn't know how to use a computer, really. They interact with everything with phones. And so it got me thinking tablets. About video games. Like, I could see a world in which they figure out phone controls, or just like some like controller adapter for phones becomes really popular and becomes the de facto controller you do for phone games, and everyone gets one and it's fantastic. But like
game consoles kind of already are that, right? It's
like, what if instead people invest in just getting a really, really nice phone and then just play games that work on phone stuff.
I mean, yes, I think that'd be fine. I think that you run into other hurdles with that. Like, look, phones have gotten more powerful than ever, but like also you look at Resident Evil 4 running on a phone, even the fastest phone in the world, it still has a bunch of problems.
Yeah. Well, this goes back
Like
to I think there's a lot of success to be had in just dialing back what a game needs to be successful. I don't think that's going to kill console games, but I think there's a whole market there if they were to embrace that.
I mean, I think that the phone game market, especially if you figure out the controller thing, is a potentially huge market. But I also think that a lot of people from video games, they want to play it on a monitor, they want to play it on a television, they expect a certain level of graphical quality. I don't think it needs to be, the most expensive thing in the world, but it needs to like at least look good. And, I think that is an expectation now. And I think that phones just don't have the chutzpah to do it. I think that and I also think the phone audience is inherently different. I think that if anything, I think that if you can make something like the Steam Deck, but compatible with most of the Steam library, instead of just like weird, like 75% of it,
Mm-hmm.
without like the technical know-how needed to drive it,
Yeah.
then I think that is the ultimate device because you have that simple SteamOS interface, being able to play the vast majority of games. They look good enough, and you hook it up to a TV and it looks good enough. And it's still like sub $500. Like I think what the Switch 2 is and what Steam Deck 2 will be is kind of where the future of where games are going. I don't necessarily think phone is it just because it doesn't quite have the horsepower. It's simplistic enough for sure. And you technically can hook a phone to a television if you really want to,
Technically, yes.
but I just don't think it's there. I think that if you talk to your average normie, like the ones I've worked with, hey, do you want to play Call of Duty on your phone? Like they're like, not unless I have to, or it's the only thing I have.
It's a question I think is worth asking for the youngest generation that is getting into games, especially like the ones that are like just getting out of school and getting out on their own. But I think it's an interesting conversation, but compared to like the kids that are not learning how to use a computer anymore, I think that, yeah, just it's not there yet. And it's definitely not going to be happening with streaming a video game. That whatever you are playing on, it has to run on the thing.
Yes, that for sure. I think that Nintendo in particular has been ahead of this curve since the Wii.
Mm.
They realized during that generation that doing the graphics arms race is dumb.
Yep.
It's not worth the time and the money.
Yep.
And we need to find new ways to do things. And the Wii was that, and the Wii U wasn't. And then with the Switch, they kind of figured out what people want is flexibility. Like people want the ability to play their games, in any room, anytime. Pick up a device. Hey, I can plug this in my TV, have a good time. I can play this in my bed, have a good time. I think that handhelds. I've been saying this for a while. We did that handheld future video last year. I think the Switch and now the Switch 2 and the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, like that is the future of video games. That is where games are going.
I think that's where, yeah, I'm happy for that. If they can make that happen, that would be great. And it seems like that's the direction we're all going in.
Yeah, and I think it even shows in the PC space where if you look at the most popular graphics cards on Steam, for example, the number one is a 4060, a 3060, and then like it's that level of power, and then in the top 10 is 4060 laptop.
Mm-hmm.
What this tells me is there are a lot of people on Steam game on laptops.
Mm-hmm.
Like laptops are huge. I think that portability for a lot of people is a huge factor.
Yep.
Like not everyone is guys like me who are willing to turn half of their home office into a like great place to play games. Right? Like an amazing, like big OLED screen, like great computer setup, like that's time, money, space. A lot of people just want a device where they can do it anywhere and have a good time with it, and it's easy to use.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why the gaming laptop got popular. That's why the Steam Deck and ROG Ally are really taking off. That's why the Switch is the most popular device in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it makes sense. It's I think that like this dude, I feel like he's just trying to justify the position of Netflix gaming.
Yep.
Like that's kind of what it feels like. And the thing is I do think kids want a PlayStation 6 or a Switch 2 or some of them even an Xbox maybe for some reason.
Right. The fact is they're not out yet. So why they're not? Of course they're not thinking about it.
Yeah, and to be fair, they want the current thing.
Yes.
I am sure if you talk to most 10, 11, 8, 9-year-olds, they will all tell you if they don't have a PlayStation 5, like, oh, PlayStation 5 would be cool. Because, yeah, it would be cool.
What really helps is when you have games that people want to play on the console. So when you mention, hey, do you want a PlayStation 6? Like, I don't know. No one knows a damn thing about PlayStation 6.
Exactly. Like, I don't, like what I do know is PlayStation 5 is out now and there's a lot of really kick-ass games on it.
Notice he mentioned PlayStation 6 and not Switch 2.
Yes. And, well, that's because I think that, whether he knows it subconsciously or just doesn't want to say it, the Switch 2, in my mind, is, once again, I think that's the future of where games are going.
That's the future where games are going. Here's a new console that's coming later, and we know details about it, and there are games that people want to play that are announced for it.
Yes, and look, I know that everyone except Nintendo wants to go this multi-platform strategy where they're putting games everywhere and trying to make as much money off the software as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. But what sells hardware at the end of the day is games. And what the industry is turning into is something where Nintendo is just the ultimate victor. Because Nintendo will die before they put their shit on other platforms.
Right.
Straight up.
Well,
but
Switch is an argument for both. Switch has those exclusive games that you're not going to find anywhere else, and they're also the only console manufacturer that's doing the portable thing as well, where you have the option, and people are dying for that right now. That one thing specifically.
Yes, but also like a big part of it is a lot of people buy it because these are games you can only play on the Switch.
Yes.
You can only play Tears of the Kingdom and Mario Odyssey and Smash Ultimate and Animal Crossing on the goddamn Switch. Plus, you can play Fortnite. Plus, you can play like a lot of the big third-party stuff. And on Switch 2, all of the big third-party stuff, including Call of Duty, if what Microsoft said is true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Microsoft, like the ultimate winner here really does feel like Nintendo.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's like, because they're doing the portable thing, going in every which direction.
Mm-hmm.
They have a bunch of games that you can't get anywhere else.
Yep.
And everyone is putting games on them. Like Sony finally is testing the waters. They put out Lego Horizon and Patapon. Microsoft has already put out Hi-Fi Rush and a bunch of games on there with a bunch of more coming. I am guarantee you if Indiana Jones could run on Switch 2, they would have put it on goddamn Switch 2.
Right.
So
there are two fronts to the console wars. One is the games, which I do like them sharing the games more. I'm always a fan of being able to play video games in as many places as you can, but it's also an undeniable fact that if you have a franchise that people are dying to play, you want them exclusives so that you attract people. But then they're also winning on the argument outside of games as well. Like Sony's just where everyone's at. Like that's just a standard, like, here's a video game console, we nailed it. And then Xbox is like, we're technically the most impressive, but that's not enough. Like, there's some neat little things in there that I appreciate for sure, but it's not enough.
And as much as I like appreciate PC gaming and the indie ecosystem that is there, PC gaming is more expensive than it's ever been.
And it's getting worse. Yep.
And yeah, like the buy-in for PC gaming right now is crazy. Like, it's crazy. Like, it is, and I realize these graphics cards are a month to 3 months old, but like, bro, a 5070 is a bad card and it's $700.
Yeah.
In most places. A 5070 Ti is $1,000 mid-range graphics card right now in most places. Like, brother, and yes, you can play games on a 4060, but you're gonna run into bottlenecks, and at that point, why not just play on our console? Because it's cheaper.
Yep.
So it's like, like it's like, dude, Nintendo is kind of the only one playing this game in a way that actually makes goddamn sense.
Yep. No, they've gotten themselves into a strong position, very strong, and it shows in that they're just not. They're updating the Switch in some ways, but otherwise they are going full steam ahead. Because why change?
And I think that and I think that that's partly because, and I think Sony is, if Sony, like, they're in like a weird position because like they're so successful being a standard box right now, right?
Yep.
Like, it's really hard to move away from that, but that's obviously not the future. So they're kind of in a weird place. And I think that, PC's biggest problem is not the software. Like, the software is great.
Yeah.
And the experience is great. It's just like the buy-in is so high.
Right.
Like the buy-in to like, even if I were to do a 4060 build with a bunch of other mid-range parts, right?
Yeah.
That's still going to be like an $800,000 machine.
Yeah.
Like Linus Tech Tips did a like PS5 Pro killer, right? Like, that was like, we're gonna make a $700 machine that beats the PS5 Pro, and they couldn't. They're like, and even then they still had to do used parts. Like, it's,
yep. Yeah, it's rough out there. But Sony, and then Sony's still probably hurting a bit from the Vita.
Yeah, like I think that Sony got burned real hard in the handheld space because of the Vita.
Yep.
And they're just kind of afraid to go back, and I think that's unfortunate because, man, our last news story that we have is about the 20th anniversary of the PSP, and I look back at that thing as I like ponder on that 20 years.
Yeah.
And I like, man, that thing really was the start of this whole thing. It was basically a portable PS2 level system.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, like, and they have this huge level of experience and expertise in that space, and they just kind of bounced out,
I understood at the time why they did, but it just turned out that the Nintendo had different plans for the industry. So, yeah, it was an interesting conversation. I don't know. That guy's just defending Netflix games, which that's his job. Like, he's wrong.
Yeah,
but whatever.
It's his job. Like, you do a better way.
Yeah.
Better way of doing it.
Yeah. Let's get through these last couple news stories, then we can.